On the day my wife, Abigail Jefferson, and Dominic Gorman, the university student she has been sponsoring, post their pre-wedding photos on their social media feed, I don't lash out at them crazily as I usually do. Instead, I leave a like and a comment on their posts. You two make a great couple, everyone. Let's give our blessings to the newlyweds. Everyone in elite society thinks of me as the most cowardly husband ever, who lets the side piece make a doormat out of him. 1 week later, Abigail comes home and explains, this is just an act. Dominic's grandma is ill, and she wishes to see him get married before she passes away. I just nod calmly in return. I didn't take it seriously. Of course, I believe you. In my previous life, I showed up at Abigail and Dominic's wedding to cause chaos for them, naturally. Their wedding couldn't go on because of me. Abigail began targeting my parents' company in order to punish me. My parents ended up going bankrupt and were forced to jump off a building. She had me admitted into a mental asylum, where I was tortured to insanity. Now that I'm given a second chance in life, I no longer yearn for Abigail's love. I just want her money this time. Every time she cheats on me, I'll transfer some of her assets to my name. Abigail now has 3 more chances before she ends up losing everything. Chapter 1. I looked at Abigail and said calmly, I believe you. Abigail studied my expression carefully upon hearing this. When she saw that I really didn't seem angry, her tightly furrowed brow finally relaxed. She smiled and linked her arm through mine. Nat, I'm so glad you understand. Dominic just likes to have fun, and with his grandmother being so ill, I really had no choice. I let her hold my arm obediently, but inside, I was laughing coldly. In my previous life, it was exactly because I didn't understand her no choice that I went and made a huge scene. To get back at me for Dominic, she relentlessly suppressed my parents' company, driving them to jump off a building. She also had me forcibly committed to a psychiatric hospital. There, I was forced to take medication, subjected to electroshock therapy, and beaten by the orderlies. Dominic would visit me occasionally. He would snuggle into Abigail's arms and mock me, saying I was like a dog. In the end, I died on a cold winter night. Thus, from the very first day I was reborn, I began planning to secretly transfer the assets under Abigail's name. This time, I no longer believed in a woman's love, but only the money in my hand. Abigail continued on without my prompting. Oh, that's right, today is our 3rd anniversary. I'm going to make it up to you properly. She raised 3 fingers and vowed solemnly. I promise no one will disturb us tonight. I nodded meekly and said, okay, whatever you say. It put Abigail in a great mood to see how understanding I was. For the next few hours, she busied herself with preparations. I heard her talking on the balcony. Her voice lowered. I want the best table in the restaurant. Yes, with a view of the entire city skyline. Are the fireworks ready? It has to be grand. It's a surprise for him. As I watched her busy figure, I felt momentarily dazed and almost thought that the Abigail who loved me 3 years ago had returned. Looking away, I took out my laptop and opened the black operating interface. Because of that Instagram post, Abigail had already used up 1 chance. In just a few minutes, I received notifications of information changes. The ownership of all the mansions and vehicles under Abigail's name had been transferred to an offshore trusted setup in advance. These assets combined were worth over $300 million. I picked up the long cold coffee from the table and took a sip. The bitter taste spread through my mouth, but it made me feel incredibly clear-headed and exhilarated. Chapter 2. At 7:00 p.m., Abigail brought me to Cloud Top Restaurant right on time. We were indeed given the best table. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows lay the dazzling night view of the city. I gallantly pulled out a chair for her. Abigail blushed and smiled sweetly. Nat, let's eat something first. There's a big surprise for you later. I cut a small piece of steak and put it in my mouth. But before I could even swallow, her phone rang. It was Dominic's special ringtone, urgent and piercing. Abigail's expression shifted slightly, and she immediately picked up. Dominic's tearful voice came through the phone. Abigail, my grandma suddenly took a turn for the worse and was rushed into the emergency room. I'm freaking out by myself. Can you come keep me company? Abigail tightened her hand around the phone and instinctively glanced at me. I set down my knife and fork and looked at her quietly. Her eyes flickered with hesitation, but in the end, she said into the phone, don't be afraid, I'll be right there. After hanging up, she stood up and said apologetically and anxiously, Nat, Dominic needs. Before she could finish, I interrupted her. Go, it's a matter of life and death. Don't keep him waiting. Abigail was stunned for a moment. She'd already braced herself for me to throw a tantrum and question her. She even furrowed her brow as she got ready to lecture me. Never did it once cross her mind that it'd be this calm or that it'd even urge her to leave quickly. She froze for a few seconds, suppressing the faint discomfort and unease in her chest. I knew you were the kindest, she said, leaning down to plant a firm kiss on my cheek. Go ahead and eat. Wait for the surprise tonight. I prepared it especially for you. After you're done, I'll have my assistant, Jacob Buckley, take you home. With that, she grabbed her coat and walked away without looking back. I pulled out a wet wipe and expressionlessly cleaned the spot where Shed just kissed me, feeling as if it'd been soiled. I didn't waste this perfect vantage point or the table full of exquisite food. I relished every single bite and topped it off with dessert. At exactly 8:00 p.m., brilliant fireworks suddenly began to bloom in the night sky outside the window. That was the surprise Abigail had prepared for me. The fireworks exploded, illuminating half the night sky, but when the sparks cleared, the words they formed read, Dominic, I'm going to spoil you forever. Those massive characters shimmered with golden light in the night sky. It was a true display of extravagance. Jacob, standing nearby, broke out in a cold sweat and stole glances at me, terrified that I might flip the table and lose it at any second. But I just rested my chin on my hands and quietly watched the fireworks outside the window. How beautiful. I remembered how Abigail once learned to make fireworks herself to celebrate my birthday. Also, she could see that same fleeting spark of wonder in my eyes. Her hands were even stained black by the gunpowder. Unfortunately, that person had long since died in the passage of time. Memories came flooding back like a tidal wave, yet I realized that aside from a trace of wistfulness for the past, my heart remained utterly still. There was not even the slightest ripple of heartache or anger. All I felt was relief that had been given a second life and finally saw Abigail for who she really was. Just then, my phone vibrated with a text from Abigail. Nat, Dominic is devastated over his grandmother, Mrs. Gorman Sr.'s situation. He's in a fragile state. So I had no choice but to change the firework display to cheer him up at the last minute. Don't overthink it, and whatever you do, don't cause him any trouble. This was entirely my idea. I just snorted dismissively and didn't even bother replying. You just lost your second chance, Abigail. I muttered to myself then. I took out my phone and tapped lightly, transferring liquid assets. and liquidating private wealth funds. At this very moment, Abigail, who was at the hospital holding the innocent and fragile Dominic, had